Welcome back, everyone. We hope that you had a great lunch, good networking at your local sites, and we're moving on to our next webinar presentations. This block of presentations is going to look at assessing enterprise feasibility. Our first speaker will be Ken Hart, who's joining us from Grangeville today. And then following Ken will be January Spencer with Thor's Forge Farms, and she's also joining us from Grangeville. So Ken, I'm going to go ahead and turn the screen over to you by stopping my share. So you can go ahead and share your slides. And you'll also, okay, I believe you're unmuted now as well. So we'll just give Ken a second to get his slides up. I can see your share starting. Great, so when you move up to the beginning of your slides in slideshow mode, you'll be good to go. Your sound is bouncing, Ken, so we are not hearing you clearly. We are still hearing feedback when you're trying to talk.
I'll sound test now. Is that any better? No?
It is better, but it's cutting off just a little bit. So why don't you try to introduce yourself and I'll give you some feedback.
Okay. Hi, I'm Hart and I'm here.
So that sound option's not going to work, Ken. I'm wondering if you could maybe, you have an option that you could call in from your cell phone and just mute your computer if that's what we need to do. We didn't have this feedback when you started this morning.
Is this better, Colette?
Yes, much, much better.
Okay, so I'm going to look like boy. I put up set and we'll start again. My name's Ken Hart. I work for University of Idaho in Grangeville, and like I said, a bunch of people that were whole farm plan, and then January spent.
Ken, I don't think this one's going to work either. I'm guessing your internet is unstable, maybe.
Okay.
So
for that,
the solution would be for you to call in on the phone.
Okay, I'm doing that now.
Okay. Thanks, everyone. Hang on. It's part of the challenge of linking in from rural areas. We'll just give Ken a second to log in via phone.
Okay. It's not the fastest.
And then you'll need to mute your computer system. Thanks for holding on, everyone, when we get this technical glitch sorted.
Are we better now, Colette?
Yes, but we don't see your screen anymore. The sound's good. Okay, but the sound is great.
Okay.
Okay, your screen's back up, so that's good.
Now, Are we
Perfect.
perfect?
We're
Well,
perfect now.
probably slightly short of perfect, but here we are.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you for your patience. You never know. We tried this earlier and it felt different. But my name is Ken Hart, and I'm here in Grangeville, and we are working together on now looking at enterprise feasibility. And January Spencer is here from Thor's Forge Farm, and she'll be joining our discussion in just a few minutes. My job today is just to introduce the idea of enterprise feasibility, and I have about what, do I have 15 minutes?
You do
I
have
think I have a
15.
15-minute slot to do that. So I'm going to waste a minute to give you a quote of the day. I like quotes if you heard on the webinar. And today's quote is one you've probably already heard, but we've met some new people here in our room here, and I'm sure you have around the state. And this quote's from Bill Nye, the science guy. Everybody you meet knows something that you don't. Everybody you meet every day knows something you don't. That's something for you to find out that might help you in your small farm or your farm activities. So what is an enterprise? I'm just going to make a couple definitions and talk briefly about some factors for enterprise selection, enterprise feasibility. So we talked a lot about whole farm, sustainability, and looking at the farm as like a whole piece. Now we're going to break it into pieces again, and we're going to talk now, instead of a whole farm, each enterprise. So an enterprise on a farm is just a specific activity on the farm, and those activities, when they're added together again, they make the whole farm. So the whole farm plan, they're a piece of the farm activity. Most of the time we just name them like vegetable production, so it's named for the crop, or lamb production, it's named for the crop. That's the name of the enterprise. But sometimes it can be named for a method of production, like up here on the prairie, direct seed wheat production is separate from conventional, or on the screen there, organic broilers versus conventional broilers. A different set of income, a different set of costs, even a different set of pest management, those types of practices associated with it. Or it can be like the same species but at different stages in its life, or in a plant's life. So the example I have is over a production period or response, hatching chicks versus broiler production versus egg production. And you can do the same thing with cattle, calves versus stockers versus feeders, and that type of thing. Those can all be activities that are defined as an enterprise and analyzed such. The only reason we break the farm apart like this is to investigate new opportunities, or to look at the things we're currently doing and see, is there a more profitable, efficient way we can do those than we're currently doing them, or should be looking at a new enterprise. Joel Salatin has written a number of books. I've gotten a chance to hear him talk a couple of times, and he is a very good presenter. And if you look at You Can Farm, he's divided enterprises into, he actually divided them into centerpiece and complementary enterprises. But I'm gonna divide those into a little further detail and add supplementary enterprises. So a centerpiece enterprise would be like, what's your basic, your most primary production that your farm is known for. It's like it's what drives your farm. So up here on the prairie, for example, where we're at Grangeville, most of these farms are wheat farms. They may have a cattle component, they may raise bluegrass, but they're wheat farms is what they're primarily known for. So that would be like a centerpiece they're also sometimes referred to as competitive enterprises. To go along with those is supplementary and complementary. So a supplementary enterprise, like let's just say you were growing vegetables and it took 8 months of your time. So you're looking for a supplementary enterprise that you can do during the other 4 months of the year. And maybe that's mushroom production. So let's say you could use some of your same facilities and grow mushrooms during those 4 months of the year. That adds to your income, but doesn't take anything away from your centerpiece enterprise of growing vegetables. A complementary enterprise would be one that actually doesn't take anything away, but even adds to your centerpiece. An example of this would be a vegetable farm that adds a livestock component, or a grain farm that adds a livestock component where the livestock component recycles nutrients, doesn't take any resources away from the original centerpiece enterprise, but actually makes it better by recycling nutrients into the system. So there's three basically categories of enterprises. Some of the criteria for Centerpiece, and the Centerpiece enterprise can be something. If you haven't started a farm yet, you're looking for an identity. You're looking for something to generate cash. Greg talked about how they used certain startup methodologies. They looked for more land. They looked for quick turnaround. The crops, they looked for quick cash turnaround, that type of thing to get something started. So for Centerpiece, you look at for a low initial startup and generate some cash, generate income quickly to help get the farm off to a good start. High gross profit margin. A gross profit is just the net income from the crop income from the farm or livestock income minus the variable costs. And the variable costs are just the costs related to production. So it'd be seed, things that change, costs that change with the level of production or variable costs. That's what a high gross profit margin is. It's essentially a cash profit. It's not really necessarily a profit but it's a cash profit. If you have high fixed costs, you may not be profitable, but you're at least generating cash with this enterprise. High cash flow, quick turnaround, a history of high success rate. You know, if you look at some of these, I couldn't help but thinking probably if you're going to start farming here and you really wanted to make some cash quick, you'd also have a high chance risk of incarceration because you're probably growing something illegal. but hopefully we avoid that. These are some of the features of a centerpiece. Supplementals and complementary enterprises. So supplemental, which adds to or fills in, you're using existing resources, but that aren't being used to their full extent. So looking for these things like times where you're not fully employed. This will add to your cash base, these particular types of enterprises. If we go back to what our Jen were talking about this morning, the resource evaluation is really important that we accomplish this in a really detailed manner, because it identifies, these are the 4 factors of production: land, capital, labor, and entrepreneurial management. Entrepreneurial management is separate from labor because it's a different category of labor. It's usually labor, but it's a different category of labor. If you look at any single farm, you're going to find one of these categories that's limited, that's limiting production, and you'll also find one of these categories that's underemployed. It's almost always that way. So this is the basic starting point. looking at resources is the starting point to finding new enterprises, because then once you identify where you're limited, you know, you can perhaps hire that or rent it or make up for it in another way. And also where you have excess capacity, those open up opportunities for new enterprises. You know, I don't know about passion. Watch TED Talks all day long about how to develop your passion. I think most of us have passion for things already. We don't have to go around developing it. We have it intrinsically. There's just things that just fire us up. And if you have that passion, it's right there. You have to have that passion to get started with. Some of the families and partnerships involved, you really have to have honest discussions with people, because it's a lot of these, like Greg mentioned, the time involved is there's a lot of time involved. And I looked at Polyface Farms, which is Joel Salatin. Looked at their website today, and they take quite a bit of time off just for family time to rejuvenate in the winter time. So that's important that family is included this. Remember when we were talking about sustainability the other day, people is an important part of sustainability. If you have profit but are ignoring the needs of people, it's not going to work. We already talked a little bit about some of the other considerations like legal issue and markets. So those are important to research. I included another quote there. A farm includes the passion of a farmer's heart, the interest of the farm's customers, the biological activity of the soil, the pleasantness of the air of the farm. It's everything that's touching and emanating from and supplying that piece of landscape. A farm is virtually a living organism, Joel Salatin. I'll tell you, that's really the truth. This is a picture of the chapter 4 of our text talks about producing an enterprise. So it gives you a framework of looking at an enterprise to see, can it really be produced on your farm? If your farm is at high elevation, you can't produce grapes. It's just, you know, you just physically can't produce them unless you're in a greenhouse, or I don't even think they grow grapes in a greenhouse, so it's not going to work. There's some things, this will help you, lead you through production possibilities. Then chapter 3 in the book is marketing. So it'll help you lead you through market investigations, what you need to do to look at a market and find out information about a market. And then the final one is chapter, well, it's in there. I may be getting my chapters mixed up. You'll have to look. I think it's chapter 5 is on income and expenses. And we were talking about this in our room. If you really put together a good sound plan with projection costs and such, you'll be, first of all, it's a lot easier to lose money on paper than it is in the real world. And you can avoid some of that by investigating the profitability, or at least affordability of of an enterprise. Some of the information you can gather and secondary information that's already out there. There isn't hardly a crop you can't find an enterprise budget on. Sure, those figures won't exactly match your budget, but they're available and they give you a really great starting point. There's market surveys that have been done by other people you can get your hands on. There's a lot of demographic information that's collected by the government on a county basis, county level, city level basis, population, tastes, you know, all kinds of growth rates, things like that that really help you put together a market plan. And then primary data, you can get out there and meet people. You can make surveys, go to a farmer's market and talk to people, see what people are buying, and learn from that way. We've learned a lot from January here in our room already. I'm looking forward to her talking in just a minute, and you can learn from experienced farmers. This is just this slide here just to remind us that some of the things we can do is, look, we're here today trying to educate ourselves, work together. I think the field day and tours that is part of this class you'll really enjoy, and it helps you get out there and make connections in the community with existing farmers in the community. This is a slide, I'm not even going to look at it or to explain it right now, other than say it shows the complexity of identifying enterprises, and it comes from the evaluating a farm enterprise. No, it comes from keys to successful choosing enterprises to suit your farm that's listed on this page. These two publications are free, they're downloadable, and they're very good for helping you identify opportunities. Well, I want to turn it over to January now.